have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA, where most of the news is bad, but we have some good news this week. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup, wondering if we could do celebrations in the end zone to that music. I'm so happy the NFL has re-legitimized twerking in the end zone.
The happy dance. And the first bit of news that we have for you is happy. It's from Taiwan. Where the High Court has essentially ordered same-sex marriage open to same-sex couples, and went on to say that sexual orientation is protected in their constitution. This is a first for Asia.
We interrupt these headlines for another piece of happy news. Happy birthday to Derek.
Hi, Derek. Happy birthday.
It's our little surprise to you.
Okay.
But now we get to the bad news, where in Texas, extremist anti-LGBT bills are just whooshing through the legislature.
They stopped it the last time, not this time.
Yeah.
And the Trump budget would lead to 1 million AIDS deaths in sub-Saharan Africa and devastate the safety net in the United States.
This budget. Protests greet Mike Pence on the commencement circuit in a couple of places.
A federal court has recognized gender dysphoria discrimination. We're going to have to explain that under the Americans with Disabilities Act.
We had a great time Saturday in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn, a Russian enclave, at the first LGBT Pride March. We're going to show you pictures and tell you all about that.
And we have lived to tell the tale. The Indonesian crackdown on gay people has escalated dramatically.
Very sad. The new Prime Minister of Ireland is likely to be an out gay man.
And a dramatic film about ACT UP Paris is the favorite at the Cannes Film Festival.
Or one of them.
Well, yeah, but I mean, they're saying it's a leader.
Yes.
But we're going to show you a clip, so hang in there.
Yeah.
And get your...
and get your translation on, because it's in French.
Yes.
But we start in Taiwan, because Taiwan is about to become the first Asian country to legalize same-sex marriage.
Well, let's see how this goes. It was a very good ruling from the Constitutional Court, the High Court, because the legislature hasn't acted. And they're essentially saying to the legislature, you need to fix this. And they're giving them up to 2 years to do so. Some people think it could happen within the next few months. The only worry is that they might try to retreat to civil unions and not do marriage, then they'd have to go back. But within the decision is the business of making sexual orientation a category that is covered in the Constitution, that you, on a basis on which you may not discriminate against people, and they were quite eloquent about that.
Well, what they said is they made this decision as an equal protection decision, as we are familiar with at our own Supreme Court of the United States. They said that the Taiwanese Constitution protects everybody and the laws are supposed to be equal for everyone. And they said just because sexual orientation is not enumerated in the list of categories that are explicitly protected does not mean it shouldn't be included. What it said was this list is not limited, it's just an indication, and sexual orientation should be on the list, not only for equal protection of marriage laws, but in general. This is a broad ruling that says from now on you should always regard sexual orientation discrimination as a violation of equal protection.
I don't think that Justice Gorsuch is going to like this decision. Because he's an originalist.
We don't want to prejudge.
No.
So I want to know why these justices of the Supreme Court don't understand that equal protection of the laws does apply to everyone. I think that should be an originalist position.
The decision in Taiwan reflected, as I said, a great sensitivity towards what LGBT people go through in society.
Well, and in talking about that, it said, in fact, and again, borrowing or replicating arguments in the United States, it said because of this discrimination, anything that is against people on the basis of sexual orientation must be regarded with heightened scrutiny. There's a U.S. Supreme Court term we hear a lot.
If you've been watching the show for a long time, that's mama bear scrutiny.
That's exactly right. It means that you can't just assume that a law that discriminates against gay people is okay. It has to really, really, really justify itself to exist.
Right.
All right, so yes, they have explicitly said this must be fixed within 2 years. They left up to the legislature how to do it, and they could do civil unions or they could do marriage in a number of ways, but they must fix it within 2 years. Yeah. And if they don't, then same-sex couples automatically have the right to marry in 2 years.
Yes, and activists say we've got to get marriage. It can't be anything less than that.
Sure.
And this, again, would be a first in Asia, and that's why it's so
Unless
historic.
someone beats them to the punch before that 2 years.
Meanwhile, and I'd like to start in the United States with the horrors that are going on in Texas.
It's really ugly.
If we could.
Really
because,
ugly.
I mean, they in the middle of the night on Sunday, they passed all these discriminatory pieces of legislation that are going to Governor Abbott, who was surely likely to sign them. And then there was
he proposed most of them.
And then there was some controversy over the lieutenant governor saying it didn't go far enough, or is it the attorney general?
The state senate says that specifically the anti-trans bathroom bill, which the House part of the legislature came up with a sort of compromise on. The Senate now says, nope, that's not good enough. We have to have a much more rigid law. It really has to restrict people on the basis of their birth gender. We are not going to allow a compromise. This must be made much harsher.
And the other big bill they're passing is about allowing agencies to discriminate against gay people for religious reasons that provide social services with your tax money.
Basically about adoption and foster care, but they broadened it. They're sneaking all this through as amendments or riders to bigger bills that they're passing more easily.
Now, I thought we were being protected there by the leader of the House, who was not going to let these things happen, and now that's over, huh?
It's Texas.
Well,
I don't want to stereotype, but this is what happens.
We did beat them last year.
Well, now in the age of Trump.
And now they're beating us.
Not only do adoption and foster care agencies have the right to discriminate on the basis of religious freedom, but so do nurses, lawyers, pharmacists, all explicitly protected to be able to say, I'm sorry, but I, as a lawyer, have a religious objection to representing gay people. So I am going to exempt myself from this. They also are passing more abortion restrictions, more immigration restrictions. It's just a whole hateful
Since they are doing this all last minute and they're not in complete agreement between the houses, is there any chance that they can't come to an agreement and we dodge a bullet?
I am not a psychic, but my bet would be that we're not dodging any bullets here.
Okay. When they want to get us, like they did in North Carolina, they hurry up.
Yeah.
They do.
All right. Here's a bit of sunshine. In Nevada, the governor has signed the bill barring conversion therapy for minors. That's a good thing.
You want to stay in the States before we go to...
Well, we can go to the state of Indiana and see what happened to Mike Pence there. He was the commencement speaker at Notre Dame. We told you last week that some students had talked about walking out on his speech. And sure enough, we have a picture, I think, of this. More than 100 students walked out on Mike Pence's commencement speech.
At Notre Dame.
At Notre Dame.
A Catholic school.
Now, of course, this...
you see the rainbow colors there, because a lot of it is based on his opposition to LGBT rights, even though he's for a lot of bad things.
Yeah, and they were objecting to all the bad things he's for. But if you call up some videotape of it, and it's all over the internet, you can hear both cheers and boos from the audience there. And of course, you hear these debates on TV. Should people walk out on speeches like this? And what I never hear in these debates, I think specifically, of course, of The View, where there was a debate about wasn't this rude? Why can't people sit and listen? They might learn something. I have two words for you. Power dynamic.
Yes.
You are a captive in that audience.
Yes.
You have no choice about who the graduation speaker is. This isn't a dialogue. You're not allowed to have a conversation. You are trapped. And if you want to get up and silently walk out, I say, hallelujah, that is the mildest thing you could do.
I did not go to my college graduation at the University of Virginia because I thought it would just be a bunch of platitudes and things that I didn't want to sit there and listen to. Given what I'd gone through as a gay person
I'm so sorry for you.
No, I'm just saying.
I got Gloria Steinem to be our graduation speaker, and she was quoting the Black Panthers.
You're lucky.
And we were all on strike and wearing peace signs
But
on
that
our...
wasn't all for Mike Pence.
Yeah.
He also was the speaker at Grove City College, which is in Pennsylvania, yes?
Yes.
And 212 members of the Slippery Rock Huddle and other progressive groups there had a demonstration outside.
Yes.
And they were a demonstration outside. And this is a lot of people for a little town.
Yeah.
And, people were still coming up to them saying, "You're ruining graduation."
Folks.
Let the Fuhrer speak.
We certainly support the right of the right wing to hold demonstrations and to walk out on speeches.
No, this was a Christian college, but part of the demonstrations were led by somebody named Jesse Littlejohn, 28, who said that they object to what's going on with LGBT issues and Pence and things like that.
Yes. No, I'm just making the point that we're not discriminating against demonstrations on either side.
These people were also saying to them, go to the White House to protest. Don't go around the corner when it's convenient, where it's convenient because he's here. Oh, please.
Well, he is there. That's where you want to protest. They're just nonsensical. They can't think of anything to say, and so that's what they say.
I remember in New York where people basically gave up on staging big protests of George W. Bush when he came to town. Certainly about the war in the beginning, but, people got let go. And with Trump, I don't think that's going to happen. Well, maybe we should talk about him a little bit.
There are fewer than there used to be.
Should we?
Talk about Trump? Sure.
Talk about of course.
Well, my observation this week, because I like to do a weekly rant now.
I appreciate it. I think our viewers do too.
We should not underestimate the extent to which his supporters still love him and agree with everything he's doing, and look at all this and say, see, he is a disruptor. And the establishment is upset at that, and that is why they're doing all this, investigations, subpoenas, tearing their hair out. But he is doing the right thing.
So, when they have to take care of Grandma at home because there's no more Medicare money for her, she's being thrown out because there is no Medicaid money for her at the end of her life. They're going to say that's okay because at least black people don't have it too.
Well, this is where the rubber meets the road. This is what we're going to find out. Will they go ahead and do that stuff? Because everyone is freaking out about this budget proposal.
Because white people lose benefits too when they cut the budget.
Even the Republican senators are freaking out. So, is this just a shot across the bow to scare people so that then they can pass something that is 80% as bad and people will say, oh, that's better?
Every budget, including from the mayor of New York, cuts libraries, cuts things, and then the city council puts it back. And we know that some of this will be put back. But the question is, how many senators can go home to their states and say, this is a good thing for our state?
Well, people are already screaming at everybody about the House-passed health care bill. So will people continue now scream at the senators about this?
Yes. Now, they've got
I'm just saying, all I'm saying is that there is a core... And again, I saw this on The View when they're sitting there, all these women are sitting there criticizing Trump and their audience is cheering for them. And they put up these tweets that come in from people watching at home. And half of them were, Trump is doing the right thing. He is the disruptor. The establishment is freaking out. You know, I support him. I think he's doing great.
Good night, America.
Well, just don't forget that that's substantially out there.
There was a rather dramatic headline in the Times that these kinds of cuts to, especially to foreign aid with health and the health budget, could lead to 1 million deaths, AIDS deaths alone, in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, some people say, you know, fuck, who cares, right? But you know, as admirals and generals have said, this is the money of soft diplomacy. This is what maintains the world, and we don't have enough armaments to maintain order in the world if we allow this kind of disruption.
If we were upping our budget for social services in the Middle East and empowering people and giving them clean water and jobs and education, we'd have a lot less ISIS.
Yes.
Instead of spending billions on armaments and the military, spend a lot less, but do it on improving people's lives.
One of the commentators said, he said, I was talking to a Republican friend, and I just said, all right, let's just limit the foreign aid budget to 2% of our budget. And the guy said, oh yeah, I'm for that. And then he said, well, that would double it. You idiot. He didn't say you idiot, but that's what you are if you think we're giving away so much foreign aid.
That's the classic.
And then, you know, they're talking about cutting all the research money, all the HIV prevention efforts in the United States. Cut the vaccine program.
CDC, cut $800 billion out of Medicaid, cut food stamps, cut everything, housing funds, just cut. Because I don't know if you saw the PBS special on Steve Bannon, but it is their whole idea is to destroy the government as we know it.
Well, it's going to destroy everybody. Cut the tuberculosis initiative and let everybody get tuberculosis again. I mean, this is insane, folks. Insane.
Well, but that's, you know what they tell people, we're returning your money to you. We're killing the government waste and corruption and draining the swamp and blah, 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 which is fine until it hits everybody personally. And just as a small sidelight, I think this is going to be a weekly feature. Ambassadors in the news.
Yeah.
Last week it was Callista Gingrich to the Vatican. This week, it's Doug Manchester, ambassador to the Bahamas.
He gave a $125,000 donation to support Proposition 8, which blocked same-sex marriage in California for a while. That was back in 2008. And he runs the paper out there, doesn't he?
Does he still? I think he may have ditched it.
Whatever. Bad guy.
Yeah.
Thus, ambassador
to the Bahamas. Yeah.
And then
I wouldn't mind being the ambassador to the Bahamas.
Sounds like a nice sinecure.
Yeah.
Then in Saudi Arabia, you know, Trump reiterated what his own Secretary of State says. We're not going to lecture people about human rights. This is a country, of course, where they murder LGBTQ people. They certainly haven't been doing anything about what's going on in Chechnya, and that's where we are.
Yes, so as many commentators have pointed out, Trump is criticizing Iran, where they hold relatively free elections, and pumping up Saudi Arabia, where none of that goes on. All right, in Kentucky, the Chief Justice there has denied the request by a lower court judge, Judge Nance, to avoid doing gay cases on the grounds that, you know, he has religious objections. The Chief Justice says, no, you have a job to do. You're a public servant. You can't just start making religious decisions about what cases you'll take. Judge Nance had also recused himself from a case of a trans person asking for a protective order because she was the victim of domestic violence.
You can't expect me to be fair to these people, is what he's basically saying. Because, I mean, look at them.
I can't expect you to be fair to these people, so really I'd rather have you just leave.
And Kentucky law allows gay people to adopt. I mean, gay adoption can get very complicated, and we're going to talk about another case where it does. But it's certainly permitted.
Louisiana, the Senate has rejected a domestic violence bill that included protection for same-sex couples.
Let them beat each other up and kill each other. At least it was a close vote. It was 17-14.
The
That's progress.
The far-right Christian conservatives cannot stand to have any bill passed that includes same-sex couples, because they regard that as legitimization, so they'd rather kill a domestic violence funding bill than let it include same-sex couples.
We have a lot of people in New York who do the same thing. All of the Republicans in our state Senate vote that way, against anything with gay or in it. And we have some anti-gay Democrats like Ruben Diaz, who's in the state Senate. And now, as I told you last week, he's running for city council. So I started to call people on the liberal side and say, what do you think about Ruben Diaz, who was like the Jerry Falwell of New York? He leads rallies against LGBT rights. And the mayor wouldn't call me back. The comptroller Stringer wouldn't call me back. I did hear from Tish James, our friend who's the public advocate, who condemned him, and some others, including one council member who's running for speaker. But our council member, Corey Johnson, who is gay, openly gay, would not return calls on this because he wants his vote, this is what I'm assuming, when he runs for speaker of the city council. And he can't bring himself to publicly condemn Diaz. Last year, he visited him in the hospital and said, well, we disagree on some things, but I work with everybody.
His right to exist.
Well, I mean, so the thing is, we need to isolate these people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Diaz is just so out there. And I was encouraged that some public officials, who do have to worry about the fact that this guy has a congregation and 1,000 votes right there. Actually, he's got a gay opponent in the city council, a guy named Elvin Garcia. So we'll see what happens up in the South Bronx.
Okay. In Indiana, back to Indiana, a federal court, the Seventh Circuit Appeals Court, heard the state's appeal of a lower court decision that allowed a lesbian couple to have both women's names on the birth certificate of their child. And I have to say, it's not looking good at the Court of Appeals.
Not from what we heard in the arguments, because the judges are essentially saying this biology is what counts here.
Yeah, that's a quote from Judge Diane Sykes, who Trump would like to put on the Supreme Court.
My God.
Yes. She said, you can't overcome biology. Now, the argument we've always made is that for a straight married couple, no matter what the actual biological roots of the child is, the couple, because they are married, are assumed to be the parents, and they are on the birth certificate. And the argument has been that the birth certificate is a record of who the parents are, not necessarily biologically, but legally. And it turns out in Indiana there's a law that if you are a straight married couple, but the father is not the biological father of the child, you're supposed to report that. But guess what? People don't.
Yeah.
So the court said, well, just because people don't follow the law as straight couples doesn't mean that you're going to get away with this.
So the disadvantage for us is this forces us to go through second parent adoption, essentially.
Yes, which is expensive and difficult.
And difficult. But in the course of arguing this case, lawyers for our side said something different about male-male couples and female couples, which got very confusing.
And the grounds, I guess, that one of the women gives birth, and the surrogacy for the men, and it's all very complicated. It really is. It depends.
Can't we all be parents? It takes a village to raise a child.
Do you see a birth certificate as a record of who are the legal parents, or do you see a birth certificate as a record of who are the biological parents? And you know, take your pick, but let's be consistent.
And let's talk about this decision in, where was it? The gender dysphoria discrimination claim.
Oh, Pennsylvania. A district court says that a trans woman can sue her employer for sex discrimination under the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Now, here's the thing about this. When they passed the Americans with Disabilities Act in the George Bush Sr. administration, Jesse Helms and others made sure that this doesn't cover, well, actually, they...
It specifically
let me say,
said...
doesn't cover transvestism, transsexualism, pedophilia, exhibitionism, voyeurism, oh, man, they were busy, gender identity disorders not resulting from physical impairments or other sexual behavior disorders. So they wanted to make sure that these weren't covered.
As disabilities.
Yes.
Yes.
So what the judge is saying in this case, well, what about the distress and everything else that could result from going through a gender identity change and things like this? That is what we're covering here. We're not covering what's prohibited in the law.
We're not covering being transgender per se.
Yes.
We're covering gender dysphoria, which is the anxiety that may accompany that. And that can be defined as a disability that falls under sex discrimination.
Yes.
Because you're dysphoric or anxious about your gender identity.
But if you're perfectly happy, you're not covered.
I think if your employer is firing you, which is the case here, that would produce some anxiety.
There you are.
At any rate, this is a first for this federal court to recognize gender dysphoria as something that can be the basis of a lawsuit under the Americans with Disabilities Act, and that is a big deal. It, again, is expanding the field of possibilities for legal recourse.
And I want to thank Professor Arthur Leonard of the Gay Legal Eagle for explaining it to me in writing.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Should we go through?
How about in? Well, we do some of these.
Yes.
In Georgia, we have a picture.
A young trans man. Rowan Feldhaus.
Now he's died at the age of 25 from complications from surgery, and he's famous, of course, for fighting for a name change that the state judge was denying him and said, "You better come up with a gender-neutral name. I'm not going to do this." And he won the case with the help of Lambda Legal.
So he was having a hysterectomy as part of his gender transition and developed septic shock and died at the age of 25. Lambda Legal, whose client he was, wrote a very eloquent remembrance thanking him for his activism on this.
And in Charlotte, North Carolina, Cheryl Faulkner, who was attacked back in November, has died of those injuries. A 46-year-old transgender woman of color, the 11th transgender person to die this year as a result of violence in the United States that we know about.
And in Fresno, California, a gay man in drag, and he defined himself as gay, not trans, but he was wearing a dress and was shot dead in the street wearing a dress.
Can we talk? Should we talk about what happened on Southwest Airlines on the flight?
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
Okay. So these two dads, there they are with all their kids. They were trying to board at the family time, which is when they announce, if you've got little children, now's the time for you to board. And they were not. They say they were not treated as a family. They were told one of them could go with some of the kids, and others not.
All of the kids. One of them with all of the kids.
And they just were not treated as a couple. Now, Southwest Airlines denies this. But they say, no, Southwest Airlines is lying, and we're going to court over this.
Right.
We're suing
we were
them.
told we were not a family.
We're suing them.
Yeah. Let's see if and in Iowa, at the University of Iowa, we told you last week about a lesbian athletic administrator who was claiming discrimination, as well as her partner, who was the former field hockey coach. They have reached an agreement with the University of Iowa, which is going to pay them $6.5 million for discriminating against them, which is excellent.
A couple of stories in California, this one not so nice for us. A conservative student club is suing Cal State San Marcos, saying that the university's $300,000 in mandatory student fees to promote gay and lesbian issues, okay, but they refused a request of $500 to bring an outside speaker for a conservative for Students for Life. They do have a policy of not paying for speakers, and that's what the university is saying. But they're trying to. This is, of course, with the help of all these right-wing legal groups. They are trying to do that.
Yeah,
and then there's
sounds like apples and oranges.
And then there's San Luis Obispo High School. All right, did you follow this case?
No.
A teacher has resigned amid a controversy. They had the students did in their newspaper a big gay thing, right? And this was a teacher there who wrote a letter to the editor, which they published because they publish all the letters, who said that gay people deserve to die. It's in the Bible. I mean, goes to that extreme. So at first, the mayor of the town said, "You got to do something about this guy, Michael Stack, this special education teacher." And the school district was defending First Amendment rights for a while, but I think this is a little overstepping the bounds. And so finally, they're saying that Mr. Stack is not going to be coming back.
He must not have tenure.
But it was just he said, Mr. Stack said he was compelled to speak out because he didn't want to displease God.
It's a public school?
Wait a minute. He said the Bible is without error and its hundreds of predictions are 100% accurate.
Wow. That's very interesting.
Now, you are entitled to these beliefs, but I say when you go to a public school, you should keep them to yourself.
Okay, you brought that up. Here's another one. In Missouri, a Catholic high school assigned a student to write a paper supporting the Catholic Church's position on same-sex marriage, against same-sex marriage. So the student turns in a 127-page paper entitled "Gay Marriage is Fabulous," and coming out as bisexual in the paper.
So was that a fulfillment of the assignment?
Well, I think
Maybe
he's still at the
end that
school.
said, by the way, the Catholic Church hasn't gotten around to acknowledging this yet.
I don't know if another shoe is going to drop, but there was nothing about him being kicked out yet.
Well,
so evidently he's okay going that way.
There was the story about the young woman at the Christian Academy in Boonesboro, Maryland, where she's not being allowed to walk down on graduation because she's pregnant.
Yeah.
And she's being defended by the Right to Life groups who say, we want them to carry their children, don't shame them over it, and otherwise there's going to be more abortions. An interesting dilemma.
I watched a very sad documentary called Jackson about the fight between to save the one abortion clinic in Mississippi.
Yeah.
One in Mississippi. And
the whole state.
Yeah, and it's, this poor young woman, about 23, is on her 5th pregnancy when this starts. By the end of the show, she's having twins for her 6th pregnancy. But she's all tied up with this anti-abortion group, which is saying, you got to have the babies, you don't want to, God doesn't want you to, blah, blah. And the filmmaker says to the anti-abortion group, well, could you give her a little contraception? Oh, no. Really, she's got to exercise some self-control. That's what this is about, self-control. And then she has these kids, and she's impoverished, and no man in the picture who's helping support. There's a father, but he's way behind on child support, years behind. And they're doing nothing for her, nothing.
Well, when we used to talk to groups of adults and about how to talk to kids about AIDS, and some people would say, well, abstinence is the only thing that works. And I would say, may I see a show of hands, how many adults are willing to give up sex for the duration of the epidemic just to show kids how easy it is? No hands, never.
But I look, even if you want to push that as the best solution, it shouldn't be to preclude contraception. And if you're going to sucker people into this, then give them some food or help them find housing or, do something for heaven's sake. But no, nothing. All right.
What do we think about the Toronto Blue Jays center fielder, Kevin Pillar? Is that his name?
Suspended for 2 games for hurling an anti-gay slur.
The F word.
Against an Atlanta pitcher. And there was also something in the hockey league. There was another anti-gay slur.
Well, he admits that he says, look, it was immature, it was stupid, it was uncalled for, but it's part of the game. He says, I'm a competitive guy, heat of the moment. Obviously, I'm going to do whatever to reach out and apologize, but he didn't do anything wrong. It's on me.
Please.
All right.
The rest of us manage to exercise some self-control, and we expect to pay a price when we don't.
Well, the Trump effect is that people are losing self-control.
Look, I don't want him kicked off the team. I don't want him to have a $1 million fine. No. But I think suspended for 2 games for uttering a bigoted slur is not inappropriate.
So, we told you a couple of weeks ago, I think, about how the Mormons are going to get out of the Boy Scouts, or at least for their older kids, right? They want to get them out of the program because somewhere in the Boy Scouts, gays are having a good time, even though we don't have to hire gay scoutmasters.
14 to 18, out of the Scouts.
Yeah, and so James Dale wrote a piece saying this is the time for the Boy Scouts to just get over it, now that the Mormons are leaving, and just say nobody can discriminate. Come on, it's 2017.
Instead of giving them a local option.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, clearly it didn't work in their case.
Yeah.
All right. In California, we told you a couple of weeks ago about the fight for the chairmanship of the Democratic State Party, and that one of the candidates, Eric Bauman, was being gay bashed, out gay, and being accused, had wild accusations thrown at him about sex with boys.
Which he answered. Stood up to.
And said, that's ridiculous and this is horrible.
Who won?
There also were anti-Semitic charges against him. He won.
Good.
He won by very few votes, just a couple of votes. But it gets a little more complicated because it turns out he's the more establishment figure, and his opponent, Kimberly Ellis, is the more Bernie-connected figure. So there's a big divide in the state party, as there are in a lot of Democratic strongholds these days. And just as the Republicans are divided between the moderates and the right-wing nuts.
The moderates.
Yeah, well.
The right-wing nuts.
Yes, the Freedom Caucus and the whatever.
And then there's the Trumpites versus the traditional Republicans.
Whatever. But it got pretty ugly, but Eric Bauman is the new out-gay head of the state Democratic Party in California.
Let's go to Brighton Beach, Brooklyn.
Oh, yeah?
Okay. We were out there this weekend. This was the first Brighton Beach Pride. There's the start of the march there. And
with one of Gilbert Baker's big Stop the Hate banners.
Organized by RUSA LGBT, which is for Russian emigres, LGBT folks here. It's been around since 2008. But this was 300 people. And it turned out a lot of old-time activists who wanted to support there, people from ILGO being there, etc.
There's my friend Kim in the front, who's an old softball player.
It was a cloudy day, so we didn't have very many spectators or people on the beach to see us. I didn't hear any heckling or anything. I saw a lot of people. I saw a lot of people waving and clapping on the, from their apartments or their restaurants and things. Who seemed pretty amused by it. I saw one guy who looked very upset, but I don't speak Russian, so I don't know what he was saying. But he wasn't yelling at us. I think it took them by surprise.
That was a great marching band.
The Rude Mechanical Orchestra.
And there's Masha Gessen, who you've seen on this show, who is a decades-long activist and who is Russian, lived here for a long time, member of ACT UP, great activist, went back to Russia, wrote books about Putin. Some think that the homophobic laws there were passed to get Masha out of the country.
And hold the picture, because in the background there, right behind her, is Yelena Goldsman, who is the founder of RUSA LGBT and organized this whole thing.
Right. So we worked.
And Tish James was out there, the public advocate. She was the only public official to go out there for this.
Yes.
She said, stay strong Eventually, everybody's going to want to be here. And we had a lot of fun.
And Masha said, pride is political.
Yes.
And I said, wait a few years for the corporate floats, please.
No.
I did.
I know you said it,
Yeah.
but don't let that happen.
Don't think it won't happen down the road. But this was very, very brave of Rusa LGBT. We worked with them, Queer Nation, Rusa worked together a few years ago against the Sochi Olympics and the homophobic laws in Russia. So it was a great reunion for us. They decided that, Brighton Beach, very Russian enclave, lots of homophobia. They wanted to confront it.
Now, some of the Russian emigres, LGBT emigres, who spoke said, I left a horribly homophobic place, and this isn't so great. I mean, I experience it here as well. So there's a lot of liberation that needs to go on there.
Well, there was a great debate among the LGBT Russian immigrants because a lot of them did not want this to happen. They were afraid that it would cause more homophobia in the community. And you thought you saw support. What I saw was a lot of empty space along the side of this, people not coming out to either complain or cheer.
It was a cloudy day.
It was a cloudy day, but someone who I was marching with took me aside to say, look, I live here, and what I'm seeing is that people are hiding indoors. They don't want to deal with this, and that's actually an okay thing because they could be out here throwing rocks.
Right, but normally the beach would be populated and it was empty because it was
Well, someone else said it's early in the day. If you'd come here at 4 o'clock, there'd be more people on the beach. Okay. But her analysis as a local was that there were people who just were lying low. And I talked to Yelena the next day who said, it was great that there were not people out there throwing rocks. Masha had expressed concern that it would be a violent situation. But Yelena said, I saw the hate come out online after this, that I'm very, sad about the extent to which people are saying really mean, awful things.
I'm sad the way all the hate came out at the ballot box in November. We didn't think Trump could win.
Yeah,
or
well,
you did,
this is very personally directed statement. Someone said at Rise and Resist this week, which sent dozens of people out to this, that they'd read something online about someone saying, it's not that I want to kill them, but, not such a bad thing. So this is real, and it's really important that
we survived, though. We were there. We
place.
Survived. We had a good time, and I think most people felt that way who participated.
Absolutely, and it was a joyous march, but it was certainly going into the proverbial belly of the beast.
Now, we still want you to come out for the Pride marches in your towns, wherever you are. But if you're in New York and you can't get out, they're finally going to put it on live television. WABC is going to telecast it from noon to 3 o'clock. That's a local affiliate, and it's the first time.
And there's going to be a resistance contingent near the head of the march for people who want to make Pride political and object to what's going on in Washington and with Trump. Also, coming up sooner, on June 11th in D.C., and I know in L.A. and in other places around the country, there's going to be the Equality March for Unity and Pride. Look for that in your area. Interpride, which is the national or international organization, has declared Be Proud, Be Loud, Be You as the theme of Pride marches this year. And on June 14th, Wednesday, 6 p.m., we will be gathering at Stonewall Place for the Gilbert Baker Memorial Rally and March. And on June 12th, there are going to be a lot of observances of the anniversary of the Pulse Massacre.
Absolutely. June 12th, June 14th, we're going to meet at the Stonewall at 6 o'clock, march over to the Hudson River Park and raise a flag.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. In a couple of things in the House and in Congress, reintroduction of the Global Respect Act, which says don't give visas to bigots trying to get into this country. And Representative Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, the Florida Republican who is retiring and has the trans son, gave a very eloquent speech on Chechnya and the violence against gay men there.
And we do want to get visas for those folks.
Absolutely.
So that they can get out.
Also in California, the Los Angeles Police Department put out a new policy directive about respect for trans people by the police department. And that's all I have on national news.
So we told you the good news in international news from Taiwan. Well, let's talk about elsewhere in Asia. The South Korean military court has convicted a soldier for having gay sex.
A captain, consensual sex with another man. His sentence has been suspended, but his career is ruined. He's likely to get a dishonorable discharge.
There was this horrendous situation in Indonesia, and we do have a picture. I wouldn't show it to you if these men's faces weren't covered, but they are covered. 141 men were arrested in a sauna. Now, this is in Jakarta. This is not in the Sharia law province of, how do you say it, A-C-E?
Banda Aceh.
Yeah, it's not there. They're accused of being part of a gay sex party at the Atlantis Gym and Sauna. They were paraded through the streets, exposed to their families. Just an absolute horror there. And it's part of a long-term crackdown on gay people that's been going on. Yeah,
they have been, there are no laws against homosexuality in Indonesia except for Banda Aceh, so they're being prosecuted for pornography.
And they did submit 2 men in the, how do you say it again?
Banda Aceh.
Aceh province. To lashings. They were in front of everybody with a cane. 2 men, aged 20 and 23, given 85 lashes with a huge crowd cheering this as it was happening.
Unbelievable.
It's just barbaric.
Yeah. A public caning. It was, when you look at the video of it, it's.
Well, I didn't. I couldn't bring myself to look at it.
I did, and it's
and
very,
we're not showing
very
it to you.
upsetting. No.
They were caned alongside 4 other couples who had been found guilty of being intimate outside of marriage.
In Bangladesh, 27 men arrested for homosexuality. They will be charged with drug possession because they were not caught actually having sex. They're just perceived as being gay, so they're being charged with drug possession.
In Romania, my family's old stomping grounds, 1,000 marched in gay pride. This is a country that is also cracking down on LGBT rights, but the U.S. Ambassador Hans Klem was part of the demonstration for pride.
And they had a moment of silence in front of the Russian embassy for what's happening in Chechnya. They also had a successful first Pride Week in Beirut, Lebanon. Beirut is generally known as a place that is has areas that are friendly to gay people, but this was the first out public event, series of events, everything from, bars putting out rainbow flags to conferences and panel discussions, and generally very successful.
Not so friendly in conservative Moldova, where the president was condemned by Amnesty International for saying, "I have never promised to be the president of the gays." They should have elected their own president. You're almost as stupid as Trump.
The cops there halted the LGBT Pride March to avoid a confrontation with the haters who had been throwing eggs and water on them. Can we bring up that video of Ukraine?
Yes.
In Kharkiv, Ukraine, LGBT activists were celebrating the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia, violently attacked by 30 right-wingers in black who burned a rainbow flag. Some cops were hurt, 4 were arrested. Do we have that video?
Maybe we don't.
No, we
Turns
don't.
out we don't.
Okay, never mind.
Well, maybe we can put up the picture of St. Petersburg where, for a change, 300 demonstrators demonstrated peacefully for Ida Hot B. It's, it's the International Day
I
against
just said it, so
homophobia.
whatever. Peaceful demonstration, and they were also protesting what had happened, what's happening in Chechnya, and that was kind of a flash mob situation.
Let's get a picture of this Irish. Let's get a picture of this Irish guy up.
Okay.
We've talked about this politician before, Leo Varadkar. He's 38. He was the out gay health
minister. He's the one on the right?
Yes. He only came out in 2015, but he is now a 1-14 favorite with the bookmakers to be the next leader of the Fine Gael party. The current Prime Minister Taoiseach is stepping down, so he will succeed to the Prime Minister's post, not through an election. He'll have to stand for election eventually, but Ireland will have an out gay prime minister.
My favorite picture comes from Shanghai, China. It turns out they have a weekly marriage market in Shanghai where mothers go out and put up pictures and descriptions of their children who are marriageable in an attempt to find partners for them. These are mothers of gay children with rainbow umbrellas, and they want gay partners for their children.
They should go to PFLAG.
Well, they were kicked out of the marriage market because they were told they had no license for handing out literature.
Well, this is,
we're hopscotching the globe with excuses for prosecution.
This is a different culture, and we've gone through some of that in the United States when we try to do things.
Well, the different culture is that they have a marriage market that mothers show up at with soliciting for their kids. But how heartwarming that those mothers are out there in Shanghai.
And it sounds like
pimping for their kids.
It sounds like it could be heartwarming, but some people have criticisms of this. The Ottawa government, the Canadian government, Prime Minister Trudeau, they're going to apologize for all the crap that they've dished out to gay people over the years, especially for those who worked in government, the military, public service. I mean, really, there were horrible things that have happened all along, and some people think it's too little too late, but it is apparently going to happen. And they're looking at some compensation in some cases.
That would be nice. In Colombia, the anti-gay orange bus that we've shown you in other places has shown up. The right wing now wants to make this a worldwide thing where they go around and they have this bus that's covered with an orange covering that has all these anti-trans, anti-gay slogans on it because they want it to provoke violence from us. And there are people who get upset and who throw an egg at the bus or shout at it or something. And then they go, oh, we're victims, poor us. So in Colombia, a right-wing presidential candidate says gays threw paint on him.
Doesn't Trump have an orange covering also?
Yes.
Yes.
In Lithuania, they have taken in 2 gay refugees from Chechnya. Wouldn't it be nice if the United States did that?
And in the Netherlands, a gay couple was using a surrogate for a baby, and then they did the DNA test on she gave the kid to the gay couple. And then they did a DNA test, and it turns out that her own husband, who she wasn't supposed to be having sex with in order to make this happen.
Wasn't supposed to be having unsafe sex with.
Unprotected sex, yes, exactly. Of course, thank you very much indeed. Anyway, they had to give back the baby because it wasn't their baby.
In Bermuda, where the court ruled that marriage for same-sex couples should be legal, anti-marriage activists are still doing demonstrations and proposing bills to overturn the court decision, where we don't think they're going to get anywhere with that. But we'll see.
AIDS news.
Yes.
I haven't been up there yet, but there's a new exhibit at the Museum of the City of New York called AIDS at Home. Art and everyday activism, and that's the kind of thing that you're going to see if you go up there. It looks at the 80s, from the early 80s especially. A lot of artists represented, including David Wojnarowicz, Nan Goldin, others. Avram Finkelstein. Steen, thank you. I always get those mixed up. Anyway, lots of good people, and that's up at the Museum of the City of New York.
And in France at the Cannes Film Festival, one of the hot films of the year is 120 Beats Per Minute, which is made by a guy who's a veteran of ACT UP Paris, and it's a dramatization
Bonjour tout le monde, nous sommes ACT UP Paris et nous sommes venus vous donner un cours de prévention sur le sida parce que l'État français est incapable de nous informer.
The scene they're showing right now is like ACT UP Paris going into a classroom and just doing AIDS education because they weren't being allowed to do it, and they just start doing it, and that's the way things were done there. It says, and they acknowledged that AIDS was a war. ACT UP Paris had a great international reputation as being one of the most active chapters in the world.
This is not a documentary, however. It is a dramatization. We'll keep you alerted as to when it becomes available here, but it may win big awards at Cannes. All right.
Director is Robin Campillo.
Yeah. The American Society of Plastic Surgeons has released results of a study of gender confirmation surgeries in the U.S. Last year, 3,256, up 20% from the year before, a few more male to female than female to male. They attribute the rise to more visibility for trans people and more insurance coverage from the insurance industry. And a terrible story from Denver of a man who was arrested for doing a back alley trans surgery, basically. Yes. But the trans woman he did it on defended him as having tried to do a good job, but she had to be taken to the hospital for extensive bleeding. She said, look, I didn't want to go through what I had to go through to get it legally, so...
I think we are all going to be going through this in future years, given the cuts that are coming down.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Entertainment news.
Well, I saw a play called Rotterdam about a British lesbian couple. Well, they were a lesbian couple living in Rotterdam, and it's yet another play about where the actor on the left says, I'm really a man after 7 years. And, it's a subject ripe for dramatization, but the supporting players were more successful here. They do provide a very good insert about transgender resources in the program.
The Quad Cinema in New York on West 13th Street is doing a month in June, Pride at the Quad, with an amazing lineup of movies, old and new. Go to quadcinema.com to check out what's there. It's really intriguing.
Yeah. I saw another play called The Whirligig, and I was really looking forward to this. It's by Hamish Linklater, who's a very fine actor, but it's a very muddy play, as you can see. There's Joja Mamet up there on the tree branch with Johnny Orsini. But the cast is led by Norbert Leo Butz, who's a very strong Broadway actor. But a lot of these actors are up there, and they're just talking to each other like this. And I wanted to say, it's not a very big house. I wanted to say, hey, we're out here. I can't hear you. I'm a little hard of hearing, but I don't think they were making much of an effort. Anyway.
You should have done that.
I almost did. Put the audience in first class. We're the ones, buying the tickets. It's all about a daughter who's dying and the family who's dying of. She's a drug addict and all this kind of stuff.
We're down to our last
everybody
35
feels guilty.
seconds.
Okay, Michael Musto. We got a picture of him with Rosie O'Donnell. He was roasted. Rosie offered to double the take there for
Callan Lord.
Callan Lord. That was great.
Yeah.
Most of the jokes can't be repeated on our family show.
No. Judy Gold was good, and Bruce Valanche hosted the evening, and we love Michael Musto.
We do.
Come back here soon, Michael.
You were very brave, Michael, to sit there.
We will be back here next week with more of Gay USA. Thank you for watching, and again, happy birthday, Derek.
Yes.
Bye.